What an honor to be here tonight and to be a part of the last lecture. When I made this decision to retire about a year ago, it was with lots of mixed feelings. One was I started to realize that I had accomplished a lot of things, and that felt really good. But I also knew there were still a lot of things that I still needed and wanted to do. So it's still with a lot of mixed emotions that I entered this time called retirement. So what I'd like to do tonight is share a few lessons with you, a few lessons learned as I've gone through my 12 years here at North Central. So first of all, there were no rules for this. So if you can recall something you get involved in and there's no rules, then you just have to make them up yourself, right? So that's what I did. So I've got 3 rules that I'm going to try to accomplish tonight with this last lecture. One is to just pay forward my lessons and my mistakes so that you can learn from those. And I'm going to follow my own advice when I talk about sometimes being okay with making mistakes. You can make mistakes as often as you need to, as long as you don't make them in front of the same people all the time, right? So I'll share some of those with you. I want to provide a path for the places you may go. I love that theme. I'm a big Dr. Seuss fan anyway, so that's our theme tonight. And so as some of you are preparing to depart North Central as well, hopefully a path that you may want to take. And then I want to recognize and celebrate the many North Central experiences and successes that I've had and maybe some of you have had as well. My first lesson, let me start with this idea of, again, Dr. Seuss. So today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. The words of Dr. Seuss. So lesson number 1. As you go through life, you can choose to observe or fully participate. So as you think about this, who are the participants in the room? You're participating in life versus observing. Come on, I hope so. I really hope so, because so much more of life can be appreciated when we participate. So what I'd like to do is I want to show you a quick clip. And I want to hope that it's going to cause you to say to yourself, am I the participant or the observer? Am I the one who interacts, or am I the one who waits for somebody else to interact? So I think we have this all set up to go. Thanks, Courtney. This is a TED clip, and it's called Everyday Leadership. And I thought you'd enjoy it. So let me take a couple minutes, let's watch it, and then see what you think of it.
How many of you are completely comfortable with calling yourselves a leader? See, I've asked that question all the way across the country, and everywhere I ask it, no matter where, there's always a huge portion of the audience that won't put up their hand. And I've come to realize that we have made leadership into something bigger than us. We made it into something beyond us. We made it about changing the world. And we've taken this title of leader and we treat it as if it's something that one day we're going to deserve. But to give it to ourselves right now means a level of arrogance or cockiness that we're not comfortable with. And I worry sometimes that we spend so much time celebrating amazing things that hardly anybody can do, that we've convinced ourselves that those are the only things we're celebrating. And we start to devalue the things that we can do every day. And we start to take moments where we truly are a leader, and we don't let ourselves take credit for it, and we don't let ourselves feel good about it. And I've been lucky enough over the last 10 years to work with some amazing people who have helped me redefine leadership in a way that I think has made me happier. And with my short time today, I just want to share with you the one story that is probably most responsible for that redefinition. I went to a school in a little school called Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. And on my last day there, a girl came up to me and she said, I remember the first time that I met you. And then she told me a story that happened 4 years earlier. She said, on my day before I started university, I was in the hotel room with my mom and my dad. And I was so scared and so convinced that I couldn't do this, that I wasn't ready for university, that I just burst into tears. And my mom and my dad were amazing. They were like, look, we know you're scared, but let's just go tomorrow. Let's go on the first day. And if at any point you feel as if you can't do this, that's fine. Just tell us, we'll take you home. We love you no matter what. And she said, so I went the next day, and I was standing in line getting ready for registration, and I looked around, and I just knew I couldn't do it. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I had to quit. And she says, I made that decision, and as soon as I made it, there was this incredible feeling of peace that came over me. And I turned to my mom and my dad to tell them that we needed to go home. And just at that moment, you came out of the student union building wearing the stupidest hat I've ever seen in my life. It was awesome. And you had a big sign promoting Shine Around, which is Students Fighting Cystic Fibrosis, a charity I've worked with for years. And you had a bucket full of lollipops. And you were walking along and you were handing the lollipops out to people in line and talking about Shine Around. And all of a sudden, you got to me and you just stopped and you stared. It was creepy. This girl right here knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then you looked at the guy next to me and you smiled and you reached in your bucket, you pulled out a lollipop and you held it out to him. And you said, you need to give a lollipop to the beautiful woman standing next to you. And she said, I have never seen anyone get more embarrassed faster in my life. He turned beet red. He wouldn't even look at me. He just kind of held the lollipop out like this. And I felt so bad for this dude that I took the lollipop. And as soon as I did, you got this incredibly severe look on your face and you looked at my mom and my dad and you said, look at that, look at that. First day away from home, and already she's taking candy from a stranger. And she said, everybody lost it. 20 feet in every direction, everyone started to howl. And I know this is cheesy, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but in that moment when everyone was laughing, I knew that I shouldn't quit. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and I knew that I was home. And I haven't spoken to you once in the 4 years since that day, but I heard that you were leaving. And I had to come up and tell you that you've been an incredibly important person in my life, and I'm gonna miss you. Good luck. And she walks away, and I'm flattened. And she gets about 6 feet away, she turns around and smiles and goes, you should probably know this too. I'm still dating that guy 4 years later. A year and a half after I moved to Toronto, I got an invitation to their wedding. Here's the kicker, I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that moment, and I searched my memory banks because that is funny, and I should remember doing it, and I don't remember it. And that was such an eye-opening, transformative moment for me to think that maybe the biggest impact I'd ever had on anyone's life, a moment that had a woman walk up to a stranger 4 years later and say, you've been an incredibly important person in my life, was a moment that I didn't even remember. How many of you guys have a lollipop moment, a moment where someone said something or did something that you feel fundamentally made your life better? All right. How many of you have told that person they did it? See, why not? We celebrate birthdays where all you have to do is not die for 365 days. And yet we let people who have made our lives better walk around without knowing it. And every single one of you has been the catalyst for a lollipop moment. You have made someone's life better by something that you said or that you did. And if you think you have it, think about all the hands that didn't go back up when I asked that question. You're just one of the people who hasn't been told. But it is so scary to think of ourselves as that powerful. It can be frightening to think that we can matter that much to other people. Because as long as we make leadership something bigger than us, as long as we keep leadership something beyond us, as long as we make it about changing the world, we give ourselves an excuse not to expect it every day from ourselves and from each other. Marianne Williamson said, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that frightens us. And my call to action today is that we need to get over that. We need to get over our fear of how extraordinarily powerful we can be in each other's lives. We need to get over it so we can move beyond it. And our little brothers and our little sisters, and one day our kids, or our kids right now, can watch us start to value the impact we can have on each other's lives more than money and power and titles and influence. We need to redefine leadership as being about lollipop moments. How many of them we create, how many of them we acknowledge, how many of them we pay forward, and how many of them we say thank you for. Because we've made leadership about changing the world, and there is no world. There's only 6 billion understandings of it. And if you change one person's understanding of it, one person's understanding of what they're capable of, one person's understanding of how much people care about them, one person's understanding of how powerful an agent for change they can be in this world, you change the whole thing. And if we can understand leadership like that, I think if we can redefine leadership like that, I think we can change everything. And it's a simple idea, but I don't think it's a small one. And I want to thank you all so much for letting me share it with you today.
Yes? You like it? Yeah. Because we can relate to it. We've all had lollipop moments. But here's the call. The call to action then is to tell somebody else. Tell somebody else that has had that influence on you. And so under this lesson number 1, how we participate in life is we're transparent with people. We tell people that we care about them. We tell people when we have lollipop moments. So think about that and maybe get yourself to go and tell that one person, that coach, that teacher, that minister, that parent, a brother or sister, whoever it is that's had that influence on you. So lesson number 2, create the path you desire. And wow, Seuss goes right along with us on this because he says, you'll be on your way up, you'll be seeing great sights, you'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. So this whole idea then about making your path. Know who you are, figure out what that passion is, what are you get really excited about, and then set yourself on a path to get there. And the path won't always be designed for you already. It won't already be developed. You may have to be the one that puts that path in front of yourself, but you'll do it. And there might be a detour, there might be a back road that you have to take to get there, but if it's something you're really passionate about, it's something that you'll do. For me, one of the things that I had to learn was to be not only on a clear path, but to be really open to opportunities. And so what I would share with you is there were a couple times in my life where I said never. I would never do this. And so one of the first ones was I had just gotten my teaching license. I was all excited about teaching. I had a K-8 license, and I got a call to interview at a middle school. But deep down, I had no desire to work with middle school kids. They're crazy. So I'm driving to the interview. I pull off. I'm going to cancel it. No, I'll just go. This is an opportunity. So I get to the interview. I have a great interview. Amazing principal. In the end, offered me the position, and I took it. And later on, he was like, wow, that was a really amazing interview. I felt almost like, you were doing the one interviewing. Well, I was. And what I came to realize is, do you know how well you interview for a job when you don't want it? And so opportunity opened, and here I was in middle school. A few years later in my career, the other thing I said is I would never be a principal. Who'd want to be a principal? Some of them back there want to be the crazy ones with the hats on, the lobster hats, they want to be principals. But I didn't want to be one. So I'm teaching. I had just taken my first course in leadership thinking, maybe I should start to do this. You sometimes watch people and you realize maybe I could do that just as well. Do you notice that? So then I was like, okay, I'll take a class and I'll think about it. My superintendent came to visit me, and I was in Wisconsin at the time. It was a planning period. And he said, we're going to have an AP position opening up in our middle school. How would you like to interview for it? They had temporary licensing, and they would allow me to interview and take the job if I was offered it. And I was like, no, I'm not really ready. I don't think I would want to be an AP. What does an assistant principal do in a middle school? Discipline. Lots of discipline. So I was like, no, not really. And he said, well, just interview. So I went through the interview. Had a great interview. Have I mentioned how well you interview when you don't want a job? Got offered the job, went on from the AP to the principal. Great ride. Oh my goodness, 8 years in just an awesome place. Best faculty in the world. And then my third never. I decided that who would want to get this terminal degree, this come to higher ed and get still another degree beyond your master's? But this was one that as I went through my career, I realized how awesome would it be to train principals and prepare teachers. And so at that point, I really thought, okay, then I'm going to have to get the degree. And here's the path, right? If this is the path I wanted, this is what I had to do. This was the price I had to pay. So I came down to Illinois, I went to NIU, and I earned my degree. I had just earned it when I received a call from North Central that they had a position open here. I really wanted this position. I had a terrible interview. But they did offer me the job, and that's how I landed here. But if I hadn't been open to opportunities, if I had said to myself every time, I'm not ready, I shouldn't do it, I should never do this, I would never had all these opportunities and blessings that I had. So as you think about your path, although you're destined to go to great heights, you still have to think about what are some of the times when I'm going to have to get past the difficult times. And so part of it starts to, really come to mind in that we have to have commitment. And this little boy here, make a commitment to what you love. This little boy's in the gym one morning where I work out, and he's climbing, and you see the Superman shirt, right? It's just a little Superman, and the people are cheering for him at the bottom, and he's like, you don't have to cheer for me, I'm going to make it to the top. Confident, committed to what he was going to do. Well, that's a huge part of who we are. And it's not hard to be committed when you love something. Love what you do and do what you love. And for me, that's been perfect because it was all about teaching. It was starting at 5 years old in realizing already at that time what my mission was. Why would I want to get out of bed? I would want to get out of bed every day and still want to get out of bed every day because I wanted to teach. I knew what my mission was. And so I became very committed to it, and with that, pretty successful. But it really helps when you have that really strong passion and that commitment to what it is that you want to do. So on this lesson, I would ask you to think about, you don't have to be a superhero to do what you do, but you have to have super commitment to do what you do and love what you do. Lesson number 4, it's through taking risks that we grow. And Seuss again, what does he tell us? And when you're alone and there's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants, there are some down the road between hither and yon that can scare you so much you won't want to go on. These are the tough things in our life. This is where it causes us to say, don't take a risk. So here's my chance to tell you my lobster story. There's probably only about 5 of you in here that haven't heard it, but it's my last lecture, so I get to say it again, right? So the lobster. Early in my career, I came across the story of the lobster, and thus the peanut gallery, I think, in the back. But so what a lobster does is it grows to the size of its shell, and at that point, it can't grow any larger unless it breaks its shell open and becomes vulnerable to all the elements around it, which is pretty scary. But it does that so that it can grow and then reestablish its shell again. And it does this over and over in its life cycle. Leaders are a lot like lobsters. They can only get to a certain size before they have to take a risk. They've got to break that shell open, and they've got to dare to grow. But once they do, the shell gets reestablished and they're safe again. And are we going to stay at that point of safety? No. Because if we want to keep growing and changing and being on that mission to accomplish what we want to, we've got to take risks. And that's what life is all about. Taking a risk when you know it's going to help you get to the place that you want to be. So, the story of the lobster. I've got quite the collection, by the way. Compliments again of how many times the lobster story has been told. My next lesson is what you look for. Have you noticed that when you look for certain things, you see them? So if you start thinking about you're going to buy a Toyota, what do you start to see on the road? Toyotas, right. So right after I got offered this job here, right before I got offered the job at North Central, I sort of had this dilemma because I was at NIU and I had a possibility to stay there for a position. And I got a call from the dean here offering me the job. And I was like, I was a little uncertain about the whole thing. What should I do? It was February, and I look out in my backyard, and it's snowy, and there's all kinds of snow on the bird feeder, and I see this bright red cardinal. It was a sign. It was a sign that I was supposed to take the job. And so I did. Now, in retrospect, I started to realize that sometimes we may be guilty of what we look for is what we see, right? Because then I realized, upon further reflection, that there was a very good chance I could see a cardinal, being that it's the Illinois state bird, right? And there was far less chance that I was ever going to see a husky in my backyard. But you know, that's what I wanted to see. And that's what we do. And when you see good in people and want to see good in people, that's how you'll look at life. And that'll be contagious. You know what? Look for your ideals. When I interviewed for my first job, they asked me, what is a strength and what is a weakness? I said, it's the same one. I'm idealistic. Well, that's great, but maybe it isn't. But we have to look for it, right? We have to dream big, we have to look for the ideals, and what we look for is what we'll see. Lesson number 6, appreciate the gift in others. And sometimes these gifts need to be opened up in order to be appreciated. What do you like about Cracker Jacks? Oh, you don't? Oh boy, bad. What do some people like about Cracker Jacks? Yes, way in the back. They have caramel on them. Not the answer I was looking for. There's a prize inside. Yes, there's a prize inside. So, sure, I call on the 5-year-old. But you know what? The prize is inside, but it's not going to do anybody any good if we never open up the box. There's people in our lives that are prizes, and sometimes we have to help open those gifts. And sometimes we have to be the one to realize that we have a prize, and we have to open up what we have. And again, sometimes that isn't easy. But as you go through life and you look at how different people are, instead of not enjoying those differences or being critical of those differences, how much more enjoyable does it become for us when we look at somebody and we say, wow, I don't know him very well, but he's a gift. And I just have to figure out what that gift is. It's a great way to go through life. Lesson number 7, my favorite team, except for the lacrosse team. We all need a supportive team in our life. We don't do what we do and we don't get down that path where we want to go without people that help us. And so Sue says, you may come to a place where the streets are not marked, some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark, a place you could sprain both your elbow and shin. Do you dare to go on? Do you dare to go in? And so as I've gone through life, I've realized a lot of people have helped me to be who I am. Look around the people in your life. Are they making you better? That's your team. So one of the key members of my team that I'm really excited to share with you tonight, number 1 member of my team, has made me better for almost 60 years of my life. Number 1 team member, my first teacher, my best friend, my mom. And what other team members do we have? Well, for me, I've also had my department chair, Maureen Kincaid. She's an amazing person. If you know her, you know what I'm saying. Nobody can outwork her. She's fearless, she's persistent, and the many accolades that we have in education today is because we've had a leader to take us there. And that's been Maureen Kincaid. And my co-worker in leadership, there's 2 of us that have worked awfully hard on this program. Kathleen King, my right hand and my left hand. She's been amazing, Professor King. I also have to say that our former president, if you remember Hal Wilde, an amazing guy. The the cap, of course, and everywhere on campus. Amazing part of what we've been able to do here in education. Just an awesome member of my team as well. And then I would also have to say my co-author. I've written a couple books with Kelly Sanders, and The Courage to Lead, The Courage to Grow. The one thing that we realized in writing 2 books, one is a kind of a regular text and one is a workbook. We realized that you don't have to write nearly as much if you write a workbook. Right, so we probably should have stuck with that on the second one. Yeah. But we've done some amazing work together. And then last of all, my partner of 33 years has made me so much of who I am today, my partner Carol. So who's on your team? And you're not, you're not nearly so old as me, so your team hasn't been developed yet. But when it does, and as you develop it, don't let those people get away. When you've got that great coach, the Al Cariuses, right? And those great teammates and mentors in your life, hang on to them because they become your team. And then when you get at the point where I am, you look back and you say, wow, these are the people that really made me something special. Last couple lessons here. I want to at least be able to share lesson 8. Be courageous in the things that matter. Make a difference. I will tell you that becoming a principal took courage. Coming to higher ed took courage. I was like in the public school system, and coming to here was a very different way of life, very different. And it really took me a while to get used to it. But I'll give you a quick example of one of the things that taught me courage, and it was a 520-mile bike ride. It was called the Heartland AIDS Ride, and it was right before I started here. And I saw a friend finish it in Chicago, and it was amazing, and it was inspiring. And so I looked at my friend, and we said, let's do it. So we looked into it, and we got all excited. We were going to do 520 miles from Minneapolis to Chicago in 5 days. And you'd sleep on the ground at night. You have tents, and they had like this mobile kitchen and showers and things. And you had to raise $1,000 to be in it. But we were going to do it, and we were all excited about doing it. There was just one thing I had to do first. I had to buy a bike. So I bought a bike. I started learning about cycling. I started training, and I thought, okay, I can do this. So my friend and I went to Madison, Wisconsin, and we did a 100-mile bike ride. It almost killed us. That was 100 miles, and we were about a month away from this event. How was I ever going to do 520 miles? At the end of that day, we just looked at each other, and we couldn't even talk. We were just like parted ways. We didn't talk for 2 or 3 days. We were just like, what are we going to do? What do you think, on the more serious side, what do you think was the feeling we were experiencing? Fear. It was fear. I was like, what if I can't do this? What if I fail? So I rethought it and thought, okay, what am I going to have to do? And this is what I learned about myself. So first of all, I had to train a lot harder. Secondly, I got a big old map of that route from Minneapolis to Chicago. I put it on my dining room table, and every time I walked past it, I had to appreciate what the distance was I was going to have to go. I read some books. I got inspired by Lance Armstrong's book at the time. It's about More Than the Bike, when he was going through cancer. So I inspired myself, and I talked to people that had done it. So what I did is I had strategies to combat my fear. So what happens when you are fearful? First of all, it's okay. But it's still a matter of figuring out, how am I going to get past this fear? And so I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to get past that fear. I did go through the 520-mile bike experience. It did almost kill me, but it was amazing. It was the most accomplished, inspiring thing I probably have ever done. And I can't even tell you how I did it. But that's what we find out about ourselves. We dig deep and we find ways to do things we could have never done before. And it gave me a confidence after that to do almost anything. Really, after I could do that, what else was ever going to stop me? Last of all, number 9, I want to tell you this idea that comes not only from Dr. Seuss, but there's a really kind of a cool passage that I want to share with you called Honor the Beginning. And I want to share it with you because I feel like I'm starting something new. I'm going to start retirement, but I'm also ending something, so I feel sort of sad about that. Do I have any seniors here? Yeah, you know what I'm saying, right? You're ending something and I feel sad, and you don't even know what's coming next. So let me see if you like this. So beginnings can be delicate or explosive. They can start almost invisibly or arrive with a big bang. Beginnings hold the promise of new lessons to be learned, new territories to be explored, and old lessons to be recalled, practiced, and appreciated. Beginnings hold ambiguity, promise, fear, and hope. Don't let the lessons, the experiences of the past, dampen your enthusiasm for new beginnings. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it will always be difficult. Don't let the heartbreaks of the past cause you to be cynical or to close off to life's magic and promise. Open yourself wide to all that the universe has to say. Let yourself begin anew. Pack your bags. Choose carefully what you bring, because packing is an important ritual. Take along some humility and the lessons of the past. Toss in some curiosity and excitement about what you haven't yet learned. Say your goodbyes to those you're leaving behind. Don't worry who you will meet or where you will go. The way has been prepared. The people you are to meet will be expecting you. A new journey has begun. Let it be magical. Let it unfold. You know what I'm saying, right? Seniors. And so as we face new beginnings, as I am and as you are, we can treasure the past, but we're not going to get caught in the past. We're going to keep moving ahead, and we're going to keep celebrating. And lesson number 10, my favorite, is celebrate. Celebrate a lot. Life can be hard, but it doesn't have to be when we look for the good and we celebrate. In 12 years of teaching here, I never ended a class without a celebration. I always wanted to recognize the successes of the students, the successes of the class, sometimes giving some things away, sometimes pretty silly things. Probably my worst or best gift ever was when somebody was just going to start into leadership. I gave them the Take the Plunge Award. It was a plunger. But we celebrated nonetheless. We found reasons that life is good, and as human beings, and we all work together, life can be great. And so what I would like to do is send you off with something tonight, because I always have giveaways. My faculty would say I'm giving away things I've taken from them, but that's not the case tonight. These are not from anybody else. Do you know the starfish story? Anybody? All right, I've got about 5 or 6 of you. This is a starfish story, and this is my ending. So this little boy is walking along the beach, and he's skimming shells into the waves, and he notices the figure of this old man. And this old man is bending down, and he's throwing these starfish back into the ocean. And the sun is hot, and they're dying on the beach with the hot baking sun. And so he approaches the man, and he says to the man, "I see you throwing starfish into the ocean. Why are you doing that?" The man replies, "To make a difference." "Surely," said the boy, "with thousands of starfish all over the beach, what possible difference could you make?" He smiled knowingly as he reached for yet another starfish. As he tossed it far from the shore, he said, "It makes a difference to this one." And that's what we do in our lives. We make a difference in people's lives, one life at a time. Whatever you go off and do, that's your call. And to remind you of that before you leave tonight, I brought some starfish. Took me a long time to pick those up on the beach. So when we're done tonight, I'll put the baskets near the door. Please take a starfish with you tonight. Thank you for having me here as a guest.
There we go, that's better. All right, so when Courtney asked me to talk today, I had two thoughts that initially hit me. The first thought was, you've got the wrong guy. As I think about who's the ideal professor to give a last lecture, it's somebody who's been around, who's an old and worldly and wise professor, somebody who can, approach the stage with the cane and talk to you about wisdom and what life is like and what you can expect in the future. I'm not that guy. I'm going to be completely honest with you. A few days after Courtney asked if I would participate, I lost my keys to my office. This is my office, and this is the window in my office that I had to climb in through for a week to get into my office until I found my keys. A lot goes through your head when you're breaking into your own office. You wonder, is campus security or safety going to see me doing this? Is Dr. Hammond going to see me breaking into my office as, he's reviewing my tenure file? And finally, I think the most powerful thought was that this is probably not the behavior of an ideal candidate for the last lecture. So if you had any hope for grand philosophical wisdom, let's just table that right now. We're going to have some fun, but there'll be no wisdom. People who go in and out of windows don't have a lot of wisdom to share. Yeah. The other thought that went through my head is that, man, I don't want to screw this up. When you look at the history of this event and who's spoken, these are people that I look up to. Starting in 2008, my good friend Stephen Caliendo, and then we had Perry Himalis, and we've had Susan Mack, Lou Corsino, President Hal Wilde, Al Carius, Dr. Servais. These are the heavy hitters, right? These are the people that shaped North Central College. And as I was thinking about how do I fit in with that group, I was reminded of Dr. Cornel West, who came and spoke a few years ago. If you've had a chance to see his speech, it's wonderful. The college just put it up online. Fantastic, thought-provoking. And he said something at the beginning of the speech that struck me. And he said, this is my first time to Naperville, and I don't know if I'll be back. So I want to take my time. And that's what I'm not going to over my 30 minutes, I promise, 30 minutes. But I'm going to actually start my timer. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry. But the idea was that there's some gravity to this. And I thought a lot about what am I going to say? And what knowledge can I impart? And I thought the thing that I would like to talk to you about today is the world that you live in. The global world you live in. I study international politics, so it's not surprising that this is the kind of thing I want to talk about. But specifically, I want to think about, or talk to you and have you think about how the world you live in and the world you're going to enter once you graduate, how it's changing, how it's globalizing, how we're becoming so interconnected. And think about the question of, what does it mean to be human in this new world? Right? The idea of humanity, and what's the nature of your connection to all the other people that are living on this planet. I've got some pictures, right? It's early in the talk, so we want to get our human juices flowing so we can think about these other people. So I picked out, I always like pictures. So some of my favorite pictures, a fisherman in China. This is a celebration in Thailand, right? What's your connection to individuals, people living in Thailand having a celebration? The lone trumpet player in Cuba. I really like that. Think about what he's playing. The angry protester in Egypt, who's angry and feeling disenfranchised about his political, his economic, his cultural, his religious rights. This is India, This is the celebration of Holi. Indians know how to celebrate spring, right? They throw out these wonderful different colors and you get covered. I mean, this is just, you live in this same world. This is so exciting. Monks watching the sunset in Myanmar, right? How idyllic that is. The blind Bangladeshi beggar, right? Peasants in Guatemala farming. We're going to talk a lot about this. The woman or the women who make your umbrellas. We'll come back to this theme a couple times. Some guy just hanging out at an ancient site in Cambodia. I think he's a monk, but you can't really tell. All right, this is Ukraine, the lone piano player. So in Kiev a few months back, there were major protests, and the government at that time was cracking down. And this young man brought out a piano and played John Lennon's Imagine in front of the forces. And this is my favorite one. This is also from India. This is a man, there's a traveling theater that goes around showing movies, and you can see his face as he's watching the movie. And you think about the ways in which you can connect and how that you've probably had a similar feeling when you sat in and watched a movie. All right, so we got to think about our connections, our relationship to the people around the world, and whether we can talk about a global civilization. Is that happening? Is there something broader, a global culture that unites us? Today I'm going to argue there is. And not only is there, actually I should say, not yet. I think we're moving that direction. And my charge for you today, for you seniors that are going out in the world, is that you're the one that can make this happen. Previous generations haven't been able to do this, but you can do this. It's very, very exciting. All right, we got to come back to our theme of Dr. Seuss today, right? So let's start with the opening, and this was already read, but I'm going to read it again because I like reading poetry in classes. I know it's not a great technique, but I like to do it. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know. And you are the guy or gal who will decide where to go. You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you'll say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down a not-so-good street. Now, just in case you don't know about those not-so-good streets, here's a listing of the U.S. Department travel bans. You should not go to any of these states right now. North Korea in particular. Dennis Rodman, no matter how much he asks, don't go with him. All right, but the reason I put this up is, even though I don't want you going to North Korea anytime soon, I do want you thinking about North Koreans. I do want you thinking about everyone on this list and the other states that aren't on this list. When we make lists like this, it tends to divide us. Right? We think, oh, that's a different world. That's a different planet. Those people have no connection to me. But the reality is you do. And so even though I was the one who made the list, you got to get beyond this list to think about your connection with the world. Because no matter what we think, we're being pulled together. Globalization is a powerful, powerful force. Former Secretary, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan has said, it has been said that arguing against globalization is like arguing against the laws of gravity. I really believe this. You may like globalization, you may not like globalization, but it is a powerful, powerful force. And we have to think more deeply about it. Here's an example. If you don't believe me about globalization, this is a tunnel in the Gaza Strip. So I know some of you aren't political science majors, but there's two Palestinian territories. You've got Israel and you've got West Bank on one side and the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip borders on Egypt and Israel. Both countries have put up borders, trade embargoes, so you can't get anything in. And anytime you tell a people you can't get something in, you put up barriers, they dig tunnels. So in Gaza, they've dug these tunnels. And all sorts of things go through the tunnels, weapons, supplies, all sorts of things. But also, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So think about this. It's a warlike situation, and globalization is creeping in. There's money to be made transporting Kentucky Fried Chicken to the Gaza Strip. Might be a new career path for some of you. All right. I also, if you want to think about globalization, I'm going to ask you, where are you wearing? Right? So think about your connection to the world. And maybe you say, I know people from Naperville. That's all I know. But the reality is what's around us, our clothes, connect us to the world. So what I did is last night, I picked out my clothes, and my wife made sure I didn't look too terrible. And so I started looking where my clothes are from, where I was wearing. All right, let's go to the map. We start in China. My jeans, I like these jeans. They're from China. All right, my shirt, this nice pink shirt, it's from Indonesia. So we're two countries, two items, two countries. We got to go all the way over to Guatemala for my socks. My socks are from Guatemala. But then when I want to put my shoes on, I got to go back to China. And then back over to Colombia for my t-shirt. And not surprising, back to China for my black blazer. And I know what you're thinking. You're running out. I don't know where my belt is. I've only got one item left. The answer, boxer briefs from India. All right. So look at this. The most international thing about me is what I'm wearing. And that's a little problematic because I am a professor of international politics, right? This is just one outfit. I know what you're thinking. You want to look at your tags. Courtney said we could be interactive. So I want us to take like a minute or two and look at your tags. Or if you can't reach them, look at your neighbor's tags. No inappropriate touching. Let's look where we're from. Where are we wearing? All right, that's enough. I only got half an hour. All right. Let's start yelling out. What are we finding? China. Vietnam. El Salvador. North Central Cambodia. That's a long-standing relationship. Fisher. India. Excellent. Nicaragua. Haiti. Jordan. Look how international we are. Any place else? Bangladesh. El Salvador. Think about this connection, what we're wearing, what we're touching. We are truly international through our products. And it doesn't end there. So the other day I came into this building and I wanted to see where the stuff in here was from. I don't know. It looked a little weird, but all right. The remote control here is from Indonesia. The computer is from China. This microphone is from Mexico. The chairs you're sitting in, they're made in Indiana. But I'm guessing that the fabric in those chairs wasn't made in Indiana. It was probably made in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in Pakistan, right? That's where most fabric comes from. I looked through as many curtains as I possibly could, couldn't find any tags there. North Central removes a lot of tags. But I'm guessing that's probably coming from somewhere overseas. Where else did I look? Oh, the garbage cans. Made in USA. Right? So I think we are aware of it to some degree. We realize that our products are from all over the world. But what we don't do, I think a problem I want us to think about today is we've not thought through much about the human side of this new world we're living in. We think about the products, but we don't think about the humanity behind the products, the nature of our relationship to those people. That's important, right? So we've had lots of conversation about technology. We've made fantastic advancements in technology. But technology doesn't have a conscience. This is a quote from John F. Kennedy from 1962. Technology has no conscience of its own. Whether it becomes a force for good or ill depends on man. What a powerful idea there, right? Now, in 62, he's talking about space, he's talking about nuclear weapons, but that comment has as much, maybe more relevance today than it did in 1962. Let's think about this, right? Think about the dual nature of technology and globalization. It brings fantastic things. It generates economic development. If you go back 200 years, go back to 1800, life was short. People were poor and sick. And think about what's happened in the last 200 years. We've taken huge chunks of the world we lived in, and we've developed them, right? We're relatively affluent and healthy, or at least parts of the world are. At the same time, we see increased economic inequality. So we're seeing development, lots and lots of growth. The market is fantastic at generating growth, but it also increases economic inequality within developed states and between the developed and developing world. So there's a dual nature. It helps promote and protect human rights. Technology, globalization, we have organizations, NGO, Amnesty, human rights that are following what's going on in the world. When there's a revolution in Egypt or Ukraine, there are people on the ground tweeting what's going on, telling you forces are coming down this street, that street, right? So we know what's going on, and knowing what's going on can help us protect and promote human rights. At the same time, this world we live in, this globalized world, enables global human suffering and exploitation. Sex trade, the movement of people, so many things that undermine human dignity. Again, so technology, you can't say just good or bad. It has a dual nature. It can reduce war and conflict. The more our economies become intertwined, the less likely we are to go to war. At the same time, it can also be a vehicle for war and weapons of mass destruction as our world changes. So it's hard to know. We can't really say good or bad. And that's why the human side of using the human side is so important, or thinking about that. One of my favorite writers is Václav Havel, a Czech playwright, eventually became president of the Czech Republic. And when he was talking and thinking about the relationship of humans to technology, he said, our conscience must catch up with our reason. Such a powerful quote. Our conscience must catch up with our reason. We're brilliant. We create all sorts of fantastic technologies. We don't really think much about them. We don't think about the human side of it, the human implication. That's where you're going to come in. All right. Your generation, your challenge is to expand the circle of who matters. Right? So we think about who matters in our life. And the circle's slowly gotten bigger. But I'm arguing that when you go out in the world, you have a chance to expand that circle, not just to the local community, not just to the nation state, but to an international level. And that would be truly historic. And I'll talk a little bit about why I think that's the case. Right now, the circle of who matters really resides at the state level, the nation state level. And we're pretty good about that. You think about within the United States, we care for everybody. So if you're a citizen of the United States, we say we care, and we're gonna do things to protect your dignity and to try to upend injustice. Doesn't mean we're perfect, and there's still lots of inequality in the world, but within the nation we say we have to confront this. An example I like to think about is race relations. Before coming to North Central, I taught at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock. And Little Rock was famous for Central High School. In 1957, President Eisenhower said, you have to desegregate the schools. And the governor of Arkansas said, no, not going to happen. Not going to do it. Not going to let those black kids into my school. So President Eisenhower had to send federal troops to escort the Little Rock Nine into Central High School, which is the high school in the district that we lived in. We lived in Little Rock. And if you look at the pictures from that time, from 1957, it's ugly, right? It's not proud. I mean, as wonderful as Eisenhower's decision was, you can see the anger, the hate that's there. You know, these are some of the protests. Race mixing is communism. I don't know why communism always gets brought into this, but again, you see that. When you look at pictures like this, it's disturbing. But at the same time, it's also very optimistic when you think about where we've come since then. We're not perfect, There's a lot of room for improvement. But the conversation about race in the United States is much better now than it was then. Because the argument that you can't respect the dignity or other people don't matter is not compelling. They're in the circle of who matters. And so over time, those arguments lose weight. Again, not that we're perfect, but that we're moving in the right direction. And now in Little Rock, there's a statue, there's a monument to the Little Rock Nine in front of the courthouse. And so you start to say, all right, at least, within certain circles, we're having this conversation. And you can think about this with race, you can think about this with gender, sexual orientation. Over time, within the United States, we've made progress. We've thought more about this. And that's an important thing. All right. So we've started to expand the circle of who matters. Again, lots of work yet to be done. The problem is we haven't expanded it to the international level. We haven't thought about our connection, that who matters could also include everyone in the world. And I think that's really important. We have thought a little bit about global civilization, but it's really thin. We can talk about it's like a thin veneer, very fragile, very delicate. There's not much there. I'm going to show you this commercial from the early 1970s, the Coke commercial. You'll probably remember it. But I think that's the best way we can think about our global civilization today. It's not developed. There's not a real identity. There's no teeth to it. That's why you're so important. Sing along if you'd like. Coke found people from all over the world to come together. All right, you feel more connected? No, that's terrible. All right, let's do a little textual analysis of what was actually said in this song. I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honeybees and snow white turtle doves. That's not real helpful when we talk about a global civilization. All right, next line. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company. That's the real thing. That's kind of a commercial. All right, what the world wants today, and in the background, Coca-Cola, is the real thing. That's it, right? I think we can do better. We can talk about creating a genuine global civil society that's more meaningful, more interconnected than a Coke commercial. I think this is important. Now, there are groups in the world right now who are trying to engage, trying to spread their message, trying to create a culture. Unfortunately, they tend to be extremist organizations, Islamist organizations, far-right fascist organizations. They're probably the most mobilized. They're the ones who've embraced globalization to say we need to use these tools and technology to connect. That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that those extremist organizations are recognizing the need to reach out to common humanity. We need to do better than that. Because at the end of the day, hatred or love can go global. I like that, right? I think that's the best line I wrote. Hatred or love can go global. I choose love. I hope you choose love too. And all right, hold on. Yeah, that was where I was supposed to say it. Okay. Because think about a world where you choose love, and maybe that's too mushy. Think about a world, maybe not where you choose love, but maybe a world where you think about everybody mattering. Everybody's within that circle. Everybody matters. All of us, right? Everybody, black, white, brown, gay, straight, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, those who believe in the spaghetti monster, right? All of them, whether you're from Seattle, Sudan, Sri Lanka, everybody matters. What kind of world would that be if we all mattered? pretty interesting, right? It's important, and I think it's also possible. In this last spring, actually this last winter, I took a trip with Dr. Jennifer Fredette and a bunch of students, and we traveled throughout Europe looking at European human rights courts. And the first place we went was the European Court of Human Rights to listen to a case on Poland. Poland was being tried for allowing the United States to set up black sites there. And well, before the trial, we were walking around, and I started talking to a couple individuals, and turns out they were lawyers. They were the lawyer for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who, in addition to having terrible t-shirt fashion sense, was also the mastermind of 9/11. So he's a terrible, terrible guy who stuck down at Guantanamo Bay. His trial's going on right now. And so as we were talking with these lawyers, I asked, you sit in a room with this guy. What's he like as a person? Tell me about his, who is he? I'll never forget this. He looked at me and he said, you know what? He's a human being. He's a human being like you and like me. And that struck me. It struck me a lot because that's not how I saw him. He's an evildoer, right? He's an evildoer who has no connection to my humanity. So I had to think a lot about that. I had to think a lot about the concept of evil. And again, none of this is to justify the actions that he undertook, but to think about our connection and to think about the idea of evil, which brings me to one of my favorite writers and theologians, Reinhold Niebuhr, who says, evil is not traced back to the individual, but to the collective behavior of society. So as we think about our connections to those around the world, and if we start to think about evil as not an individual act, as a collective act, do we not bear some responsibility? Bear some responsibility to care about those. Have some responsibility to make the world a better place. To make the world a place where people don't feel the need to fly airplanes into buildings. Right? So that's, as I think about our humanity and our responsibility, I think that's a really, really powerful thing. Again, I keep coming back to that, the idea of expanding the circle of who matters. I mean, think about a world where we said everybody matters. What would that mean for our military budget? If we said everybody around the world matters, could we continue to spend billions and billions of dollars on weapons of death and destruction? Probably not, right? Because everybody matters. All right. Again, I realize this is radical. I realize that we're talking about something that doesn't make a lot of sense when you first think about it, but I think it's really, really important. I think it's important that we realize we expand that circle. And it's something that we have at the state level. I said we think about this within the state. So if a hurricane hits, if a tornado hits, we don't think about who are the people that were hurt. We just go and help. I mean, if you think about a more local example, some of you are Bear fans. That's okay. I'm a Packer fan. And it's good. I know it's been tough on you Bear fans lately because the Packers have kind of been sticking it to you. Now, I grew up in the 80s when the reverse was occurring, where the Bears were beating the Packers with great regularity. But what's interesting is you think about that relationship. You think about how passionate we are about our football and Bears and Packers and all that kind of stuff. But do you ever think about Illinois and Wisconsin going to war with each other? Right? It's absurd. The thought is absurd. Why? Because Packer fans and Bear fans can coexist in this circle, this wonderful circle of who matters. And so that's why it's so important if we start to think about our relationship, our connection to those who are currently outside of that circle, and the opportunity that you have to extend that. That one act can change the world. I really believe that. It's not going to be easy. It's not easy to change the world. It's going to require us to be alert, to be contemplative, to examine our life and what that means, the relationship to each other. The good thing is that my favorite philosopher, Socrates, says the unexamined life is not worth living. That's how we want to live. We want to challenge. We want to think about our relationships. We want to expand that circle of who matters by thinking about our relationships to others. Very, very important. Now, I'll tell you that a lot of you are getting ready to leave North Central. And North Central is a hub for Socratic thought. So all of your classes, when you meet with your professors and others, they push you to think, to question, and to examine. Once you get out in the real world, those pressures start to go away. You get married, you have kids, you get a mortgage, a career. It's hard to live the examined life when those things happen. They're all good things, other than maybe mortgages, but they're good things, but they will pull you away from this environment. So I would ask you to push back and continue to think about your relationship. Continue to live the examined life and think about your connections to those in the world around you. Again, it's not easy. What might this world look like? What might a global civilization look like? I would say this. It's not going to be top-down. Don't think about throwing an ism at it, right? To say, oh, let's throw capitalism at it. That'll fix it. Or socialism or something else, right? It's not going to be top-down. It's not about finding one solution. It's about a process. That's why I think the idea of the circle is so important. If you recognize the humanity in others, if you connect with others, that allows these solutions, it allows these connections to bubble up. And once we recognize all of our common humanity, it fundamentally changes the way we interact. And you can think about this. If you've ever met somebody who was different from you, different in terms of sexual orientation, religion, economic, whatever the difference was, maybe they were just from a different part of the world. When you met them, you maybe thought there was some distance. And then what happens? You sit down and you have dinner with them and you say, hey, we can get along. You see the connections. I think the connections, what pulls us together is more powerful than what divides us. I noticed this when I moved to the South. As somebody who's a little left of center, moving to the South was a big thing. I was scared, right? You turn on cable news, it can be very scary, anger. The people I met down there were some of the kindest, most thoughtful, most compassionate people I've met in my life. It didn't mean I changed my political values, but it did mean that I connected in a way that allowed for us to interact and hopefully move toward some meaningful solutions. And I think that's what's got to happen at an international level. We don't want to converge on one monoculture. We don't want the whole world to look like the United States. That'd be boring. Wouldn't be exciting. We want to celebrate our differences. That's important. It's not going to be top-down. It's going to be bottom-up. And again, you, because of the nature of the world today, can truly make a difference. You can rewrite this. All right. Running out of time here. One example of this is Pharrell. We heard of this guy? Yeah. He's pretty good. I like him. All right. So he's got this video, Happy. And there was a UN Happy Day, and somebody eventually created a website where you could upload happy videos. And what they found is people all over the world started uploading videos everywhere, including Antarctica, right? This is amazing. Europeans apparently are particularly happy, but all over the world they start uploading these. And with the help of, I'm going to go a little bit over on time, I'm sorry. With the help of my colleague, Dr. Jennifer Fredette, we looked at some of these videos and we spliced one together. Happy around the world. Now, it's a 3-4 minute video. If you are so moved and because you see your connection to the rest of the world, and you want to stand up and dance, or you want to dance in your chair, that's fine too. I don't think anybody's ever danced at a last lecture before. No pressure. Here's a close-up of the map. Let's zoom in on Pharrell's hat. And let's watch our happy video.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sometimes she's evil, you can take a break. Out there, like a ghost face.
Now, I'm not at all suggesting that Pharrell is going to solve world poverty, war and peace, but I do think it's a fantastic example of the connections we share. I'm guessing as you watched that, you were smiling, not just because it's a good video, but you see the humanity, the common humanity. Our similarities are so much more powerful than our differences. And as you go out in the world, continue to remember that. All right, one more story, and then I promise I'll leave. Iceland. I'm going to end on Iceland. A couple of years ago, my wife and I, we took a trip to Iceland, and we drove around half of the country. It's a tiny, tiny place, only 300,000 people, but an amazingly beautiful place. There's a road that goes around, that's the ring road, that goes around the outside of it. And I don't think I've ever been to a place that's more beautiful. Bigger mountains, volcanoes, all sorts of glaciers and roads. It's nuts. Tough terrain. So we were there. We rented a car. It was a little car. Like when you're in Iceland, they only let you rent little cars. And we drove through these roads. And as we would drive, I would drive very slow and very concerned because there were all these big bumps and it wasn't paved, right? Very scary. And I'd be going maybe 3 miles an hour, and then these cars full of Europeans, also in little tiny rental cars, would come flying by us. What's going on here? My wife and I, we kept wondering, and they'd always be smiling and waving, right? They'd come flying by. And so we would try to figure out, what is it likely that they're saying as this happens? And we came up with the phrase, it's a rental, right? Because they're all these little cars. And it really was kind of fun to have them come flying by us and wave, and to say it in a sort of funny European, like, it's a rental. Say it with me, it's fun. On the count of three, let's all say it. 1, 2, 3. It's a rental, right? And so it was fun to see that, but then as time went by, we realized it wasn't just something fun to say, it's actually a wonderful life philosophy. So as you think about what is going to come next, right? As you enter this world, at the end of the day, we're all renting. We don't get to keep any of this, right? We're here for a short time. We're all renting. And when you return that rental car, I hope you return it used, right? I want it beat up. And I want the bumper to be gone. I want some mileage on it, right? I want it used. Maybe the side mirror is duct taped on. Because that's a sign of a life well lived. Somebody who's pushed boundaries, who's challenged orthodox, who said, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Get messy a little bit, right? A messy life is a good life. And when you return that rental car, and inevitably the guy's going to be like, what happened to this car? Don't you dare say, oh, it was like this when I got it, right? You own that car. Own the experiences. Own the messiness. Own the excitement of a life well lived. And in the process, I hope that you challenge the idea that we can only care about those living in our most immediate window. All right, I'm going to finish with a little more of the places you go. Kid, you'll move mountains. So be your name Buxbaum or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai Alvan, Alan O'Shea. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. I have no doubt that you'll all be successful in whatever comes next for you. I challenge you to think about the relationships you have to those in other parts of the world. Because truly you are a generation that can change the world, make the world a more humane, a more tolerant place. You're the first generation in a long time that can truly do that. All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for sharing your time with me.